Nobody asks you how tired you are, not the real kind of tired, not the kind that has nothing to do with sleep. People ask how you are doing and you say fine, or you say busy, or you say better, and they move on because that is what the question requires. It does not require the actual answer. The actual answer would take too long and land too strangely and leave the other person unsure of what to do with what you just handed them. So you do not say it. You do not say that you wake up in the morning and for about 4 seconds you are just awake, just present, just a person in a bed in a room, and then it arrives. The full weight of it, the situation, the silence, the position you are in, the love you are still carrying that has nowhere to land. All of it within 4 seconds of consciousness, every morning. And you get up anyway, and you move through the day anyway, and you are functional and present, and sometimes even genuinely okay for hours at a time. But it costs something, every day. It costs something, and nobody is counting the cost. Nobody is keeping track of what it takes to carry this much, quietly, indefinitely, with no clear end date and no roadmap and no guarantee that any of it is going somewhere. You are just carrying it. You have been carrying it. And the weight has become so familiar that you have started to forget it is there, even though your body has not forgotten. Your body has been keeping the full accounting the whole time. That is what this video is about, not the longing, not him, not the connection or the timeline or what the universe is doing. This video is about you, about the specific quality of this exhaustion, about why it is the way it is and what it is actually asking of you, and why the fact that you are still here, still functioning, still intact after carrying this for as long as you have is one of the most significant things about you. If something about that landed true just now, leave a like and subscribe so you do not miss what comes next. Drop "I am still here" in the comments below. 3 words. Because the fact that you are still standing in this is not nothing. It is everything. Leave it below. Now, there is something I want to offer before we go deeper. Because for some of you, what you need right now is not more general guidance. What you need is someone to actually look at your specific situation, your specific birth chart, your specific timing. I offer personal twin flame union readings built entirely on your cosmic blueprint, your name, your date of birth, your exact time of birth, your place of birth. From those 4 things, I can see where you are in this journey, what karmic patterns are active in your connection, what the universe is currently building for you, and what your divine timing actually looks like. You will receive a personal audio reading straight to your inbox and a detailed PDF report you can return to again and again. This is not a chart breakdown by sign. This is not a general reading dressed up with your name at the top. This is someone sitting with your specific energy and your specific connection and telling you what the sky actually says about your path. If you have been feeling like you are navigating this journey without a map, that is the nudge. The link is in the description. Let me be specific about what kind of tired this is, because there is a difference and it matters to name it correctly. There is tired from doing too much, the tired of overextension, of a schedule that asks more than the body has to give. That tired responds to rest. You stop, you sleep, you recover. There is emotional tired, the tired of processing something difficult, of sitting with grief or fear or the weight of a hard season. That tired responds to expression, to time, to gentleness with yourself. It has a shape. It has a beginning and usually an eventual end, and then there is the specific tired you are carrying right now, which is neither of those, which is something that rest does not fully fix and time does not consistently improve and gentleness touches, but does not resolve. It is the tired of sustained uncertainty, the tired of living with something unresolved indefinitely, while continuing to function as if the resolution of that thing is not the primary question your nervous system is sitting with every single day. Psychologists who study grief, specifically the kind of grief that does not have a clean object, the kind that comes from ambiguous loss, have a framework for this. Pauline Boss, the researcher who first named ambiguous loss, identified something that most grief frameworks miss. She found that the most psychologically taxing form of loss is not the kind that is clear. It is not losing someone who is gone. It is the loss of someone who is both present and absent at the same time. Someone who exists. Someone who you are still in relationship with at some level, even if that relationship is currently silence or distance or the specific limbo of the twin flame separation stage. Someone who is neither fully here nor fully gone. That ambiguity does not allow the normal grief process to complete. The normal process moves through stages because there is a defined loss to move through. But when the loss is ambiguous, when the door is neither open nor closed, the psyche cannot fully process it the way it would a finalized ending. It stays suspended. It stays active. It keeps revisiting the question, keeps checking the door, keeps registering the absence even while holding the possibility of presence. That sustained activation is exhausting at a cellular level. Not because you are weak, not because you are doing it wrong, but because your system is doing exactly what it was built to do in the face of something it cannot resolve. Staying alert, staying available, staying ready for the possibility of a change in the signal. The tiredness you feel is not a flaw. It is the accurate biological and psychological response to a situation that has been asking your entire system to remain in a state of readiness for longer than any system was designed to sustain. Today, March 27th, 2026, the sky is doing something that reflects exactly what you are carrying. The moon spent the early hours of this morning in Cancer, the sign of emotional depth and accumulated feeling, sitting in exact conjunction with Jupiter at 15 degrees. Moon and Jupiter and Cancer together is the amplification of everything you feel. Jupiter does not sort feelings. Jupiter does not edit. Jupiter expands what is already present. And what was present in that Cancer conjunction this morning was the full emotional weight of what you have been carrying, amplified, made large, brought into awareness whether you wanted it there or not. The moon has moved into Leo now, but the emotional residue of that Cancer expansion is still in your body. That is how lunar transits work. The aspect completes, but the feeling it opened does not close on schedule. You may have woken up today with something heavy sitting on your chest that you could not attribute to anything specific. That is why. And then there is the backdrop. Saturn at 5 degrees Aries is forming an exact sextile to Pluto at 5 degrees Aquarius, perfecting tomorrow. This is one of the most significant structural aspects of the entire year, and it is building to its peak right now, today. Saturn is the planet of long consequence, of what accumulates over time, of what cannot be indefinitely ignored. Pluto is the planet of what lives beneath the surface and keeps demanding to be seen regardless of how thoroughly it has been covered. Together, in a sextile, they are not creating crisis. They are creating honest accounting. They are asking, gently but with total structural integrity, what has been building here? What has been carried without full acknowledgement? What is the true weight of what you have been holding? And for those of you in the middle of a twin flame journey, particularly those in the exhaustion stage, that question is not abstract. That question is the specific cost of the past months or years being tallied in a way that can no longer be minimized. The full moon in Libra is 5 days away on April 2nd. You are in the building phase right now. Everything you have been carrying is approaching its fullest point. The tide is coming in. And what the tide brings to shore, just before the full moon, is often the truest accounting of what has been at sea. There are layers to this. I want to name them because I think when things go unnamed, when they stay in the category of just how I feel, they lose their edges and their weight becomes harder to locate and therefore harder to actually put down. The first layer is the longing. That is the most visible layer. The one that has language. The missing of him, the specific ache of the absence. Most people around you probably know something about this layer, even if they do not fully understand its shape. It is the part of this exhaustion that looks like grief and reads as grief and responds, sometimes, to the same things grief responds to. But the second layer is less visible. It is the vigilance. The constant low-level monitoring of the energetic field, of whether something has shifted, of whether a message is coming or a sign is appearing or the connection is moving or staying still. You may not even be fully aware you are doing it. It has become so automatic, so much a part of the background processing of your days, that it no longer presents itself as a conscious act, but it is using resources. It is running in the background the way an application runs on a device and drains the battery even when you are not actively using it. Your capacity to be fully present in your own life is being partially consumed constantly by this background monitoring. The third layer is the performance. The daily requirement of appearing functional and okay to a world that does not have a framework for what you are actually navigating. Not just the twin flame journey, but the specific combination of being in love with someone who is not present in a way that does not map onto any socially recognized category. You cannot call it a breakup. You cannot call it a relationship. You cannot call it grief in the way you would grieve something that is clearly over, and so you have no script. No language that fits. No social permission to be as undone by this as you sometimes are, because the thing you are undone by is not legible to most people. So you perform, not dishonestly. Just, you keep the full weight of it in an interior space that does not get to come out very often. And that ongoing interior containment, that constant translating of something vast and strange into language and presentation that the external world can hold, is its own drain. The fourth layer, and this is the one most people never name, is the hope. Hope sounds like a resource. In most contexts it is, but hope in an unresolved situation is also a weight, because hope requires the ongoing expenditure of energy. It requires holding a possibility open that reality keeps putting pressure on. It requires defending a belief against contradictory evidence again and again, with no clear resolution. Hope that has been sustained for a long time against sustained absence and silence and the ordinariness of days that show no sign of change is one of the most quietly exhausting things a person can carry. You are carrying all four layers at once, under the surface of every ordinary day. Jupiter is in Cancer and has been since June of last year. Jupiter in Cancer is a specific kind of magnification. Cancer is the sign of the deep emotional body, of the internal ocean, of what has been felt but not fully processed, of the nourishment that was given and the nourishment that was withheld, of the places in the interior self that have been tending someone else's needs for so long that they have started to mistake that tending for their own. Jupiter in Cancer expands the emotional interior. It makes large what was felt but quiet. It surfaces what was submerged. It amplifies the emotional truth of what you are actually experiencing, whether or not you are ready to look at it. What this means practically is that the exhaustion you are carrying right now is more visible to you than it has been in months. Not because it is worse, but because Jupiter is doing what Jupiter does, which is making things bigger, bringing them into a scale where they can no longer be minimized or managed or filed away. The grief theory of Therese Rando, who spent decades studying what she called complicated grief, describes a particular pattern that appears in prolonged losses. She found that people carrying unresolved losses for extended periods often develop what she called adaptive coping, habits and strategies and patterns of daily functioning that allow life to continue in the presence of the loss without the loss ever being fully met. These strategies are not pathological. They are intelligent adaptations to an impossible situation. They allow you to keep going. But what happens under Jupiter in Cancer is that those adaptive strategies start to become visible. The distance you have been keeping between yourself and the full weight of what you are carrying starts to collapse. Not because you are falling apart, but because the planet of expansion in the sign of emotional depth keeps amplifying the signal until it is large enough that the adaptive coping can no longer contain it. The exhaustion becoming more visible right now is not a regression. It is an expansion into honesty. It is Jupiter in Cancer completing its work, making large what has been real all along so that it can finally be truly met, truly acknowledged, truly received by you rather than simply managed. There is a difference between managing your experience and actually having it. And what the sky is asking you to do, what Jupiter in Cancer has been building toward for months, is to move from managing this toward actually having it, which means letting the weight be as large as it is, not performing smallness in front of it, not translating it into something the world can hold, actually holding it yourself, fully, without the distance of adaptive coping between you and the true size of what this journey has cost. If you are in the middle of this journey and you need something concrete to hold when everything feels like it is moving under you, this is where I want to mention the Twin Flame Journey Tracker and Progress Workbook. 39 pages, a working document, not a reading, not a theory. A system with an 8-stage tracker so you know exactly which stage you are actually in rather than which stage you hope you are in. A synchronicity log so you stop losing the signs, the 1111 moments, the dreams, the things your rational mind keeps trying to explain away. Weekly reflections and monthly reviews so that 6 months from now, you can look back and see the actual arc of your movement rather than feeling like you are standing in the same place you always were. If you have ever laid awake asking yourself whether you are making progress or just surviving, this workbook gives you a way to answer that question with evidence rather than feeling. $11.11. 39 pages. The link is in the description. Here is something that grief research consistently surfaces, something I want to say directly to you. Your body has been keeping the full accounting even when your mind was not. Bereavement researchers have documented across decades of study that sustained grief, the prolonged carrying of an unresolved loss, produces measurable changes in the physical body. Not metaphorically, not spiritually, in the literal biological body. Changes in cortisol patterns, changes in immune function, changes in sleep architecture, in the way the nervous system regulates itself, in the capacity of the body to move between states of activation and rest. This is what ambiguous loss, carried without full acknowledgement, does. It accumulates in the body as physiological cost, not just emotional weight. And the reason this matters is not to alarm you. The reason this matters is that the tiredness you feel, the specific quality of this exhaustion that goes beyond what rest fixes, is not weakness. It is not a sign that something is wrong with you, that you are too attached, that you have not done enough inner work, that you should have healed by now. It is the honest biological signature of what it costs to love at the depth you love. In conditions of sustained uncertainty, for as long as you have been doing it, you are not failing at this journey. You are paying the actual price of it, and the actual price is significant. What Rando and other grief researchers found is that the path through complicated grief is not acceleration. It is not finding a faster way to resolve the unresolved. It is the opposite. It is slowing down enough to meet the full size of what is being carried, to let the weight be as large as it is, without the adaptive coping running interference. To grieve what deserves to be grieved, even in the middle of the uncertainty, even before there is a resolution to grieve toward. You are allowed to grieve this, not the ending of it, because there is no clear ending, but the cost of it, the years of carrying, the specific things this journey has asked you to surrender, to wait on, to postpone, to move through alone. The versions of your life you did not get to live while you were living inside this. The ordinary things, the ordinary love, the ordinary presence of someone who stays, that you did not have because this connection consumed the space where those things might have grown. That grief is real. It does not require a resolution to be valid. It does not require him to be gone to be real. The loss is real even while the love is real, even while the possibility is real, even while the connection is still alive. And the moon conjunct Jupiter in Cancer this morning expanded that grief into the light whether you were ready or not. I want to spend a moment on something that rarely gets named in this conversation, because the exhaustion you are carrying does not exist in isolation. It exists in part because of the specific way this connection asks you to give without a clear return. And I think it matters to name what is actually being taken, even when the taking is not intentional. He does not know, most likely, what his absence costs you, not because he does not care, but because the cost of his absence is invisible to him in a way it cannot be invisible to you. You are the one holding the space. You are the one who wakes up with the full weight of it every morning. He has his own version of the difficulty, and it is real, but it is a different shape of difficult. His is the cost of avoidance, the management of something he cannot fully face yet. Yours is the cost of presence, of staying in the full reality of something that keeps not resolving. The exhaustion of the one who stays is different from the exhaustion of the one who runs. The one who runs is also paying a price. But the price is paid in the currency of suppression and distance and the slow erosion of emotional authenticity. It produces its own kind of tired, but it is buffered. There is a certain anesthesia in avoidance, a certain numbing that comes with maintaining the distance. There is no such anesthesia for you. You are fully awake to this, fully present in the feeling of it every day. And that difference, the difference between the one who is anesthetized by avoidance and the one who is fully awake to the weight of the connection, is part of what creates the asymmetry you feel. The sense that you are somehow bearing more than your share, that the cost is not being distributed evenly, that you are, in some way that you cannot quite articulate to anyone, doing all of the feeling for both of you. You are not wrong, you are doing a version of that. This is not a reason to be angry at him, though anger is allowed. This is a recognition of what the divine feminine role in this journey actually requires at this stage. The twin flame separation is not symmetrical. The person who is more awake to the connection, who has more capacity for the emotional reality of it, who has done more of the internal work, carries more of the weight. That is not fair, but it is true. And Pauline Boss's research on ambiguous loss is very clear that the person who stays emotionally present in an unresolved situation accumulates significantly more psychological cost than the person who manages through avoidance. That is you. That is what you are carrying. And the fact that it is unfair does not make it less real or less worthy of acknowledgement. What this means practically is that the tiredness you feel is not a measure of your weakness. It is a measure of your emotional capacity, of the size of what you can actually hold. The people who carry the most are not the people who are doing something wrong. They are the people with the most genuine capacity for feeling. And that capacity, as demanding as it is to carry, is not something you would trade for the alternative. The alternative is not feeling it. And you know it's somewhere below the exhaustion, that not feeling it would cost you something more important than the tired. Therese Rando's work on what she called the 6R processes of mourning, the framework she developed from studying thousands of cases of prolonged and complicated grief, contains something I want to bring directly to you. She found that the process of genuine mourning, the kind that actually leads somewhere rather than just circling, requires two things happening at the same time that seem to be in contradiction. The first is what she called recognizing the loss, fully, without minimizing, without the adaptive coping, without the translation into something the world can hold. Just, this is what happened, this is what it costs, this is what I am grieving, stated directly without qualification. The second is what she called readjusting, not giving up, not closing the door, but making adjustments to the existing world, to the internal world and the external world, that accommodate the loss rather than pretending it is not there. Not incorporating the loss as the definition of yourself, but allowing it to have a real place in the landscape of your life, rather than holding it in a suspended state that has no landing place. These two things sound like they are contradictory in a twin flame journey. How do you recognize a loss that is not finalized? How do you readjust to something that is not yet over? Rando's answer, arrived at through years of clinical work, is that the mourning can be of what has been lost so far without requiring the closing of what is still possible. You can grieve the years of uncertainty without grieving the connection. You can grieve the cost of the carrying without grieving the thing you are carrying. You can grieve the version of your life that has been on hold, the ordinary love and ordinary presence and ordinary reliability of someone who stays, without that grief being a rejection of what this connection is building toward. Those are different losses. They can be grieved separately. And grieving them separately, naming them with precision, does not collapse the possibility of what is still to come. It actually clears the field for it. Because carrying unmourned losses alongside active hope is one of the heaviest configurations a person can be in. When you separate them, when you give the grief its specific object and let it do what it needs to do with that object, the hope becomes cleaner, less tangled, less contaminated by the weight of everything it has been asked to carry alongside it. So the practical application of this is, let yourself grieve the cost. Not the connection, not him, not the possibility, but the specific things that have been lost or deferred or asked to wait indefinitely. The years, the ordinary Tuesday evenings, the person you would have been if you had spent this season in a love that was present and uncomplicated. The version of yourself that did not have to become this strong because the strength would not have been required. Let that grief be real. Let it have language. Write it down if that is where it lives. Say it out loud to someone who can hold it if you have someone like that. Let it exist as a finished thought rather than a floating weight. And then, alongside it, keep the door of possibility where it is. Separate, clean, not carrying the grief, not weighed down by the accumulation of what the journey has cost. That is the structure Rando points toward. And under Jupiter in Cancer, with its amplification of the emotional interior, and with the Saturn-Pluto sextile calling for the honest accounting of everything that has been built and everything that has been lost, this is the week when that separation becomes possible. The full moon in Libra is coming in 5 days, April 2nd. Libra is the sign of balance, of what has been given and what has been received, of the scales and whether they are true. A full moon in Libra, arriving in the wake of this Saturn-Pluto reckoning and this Jupiter in Cancer expansion, is going to ask you a very specific question. What can you set down? Not the love. The love is not a burden and it is not asking to be released. The love is yours and it is doing something in you that is building something real. Even in the silence, even without an audience, even without a clear outcome. But the vigilance, you are allowed to set that down. The background monitoring of the field, the constant checking, the alertness that has been running on automatic for so long that you stop noticing it, you are allowed to let that go quiet. Not as a strategy, not to make him notice, but because it is costing you more than it is giving you, and the connection does not actually need your vigilance to survive. The connection is not a fire you have to keep tending for it to remain lit. It is lit. It was lit before you started tending it. It will remain lit after you stop. The performance. You are allowed to stop performing okay for people who do not have the capacity to hold something more honest than that. You do not owe anyone a tidy presentation of your interior life. You are allowed to be tired in front of the people who can sit with it. You are allowed to say, to the people who earn that answer, I am carrying something very heavy and I have been carrying it for a very long time and I am not sure when I get to put it down. And some days that is harder than others. The hope you have been gripping, not hope itself, but the gripping of it, the white knuckling of possibility, the constant effort of keeping a door open through sheer force of will. You are allowed to let the door exist without holding it open personally. The door does not need you. It is hinged. It opens and closes by something larger than your effort, and your job was never to be the force that held it open. Your job was to do your own becoming. The door was always someone else's to walk through. Saturn sextile, Pluto does not bring softness, but it brings something more useful than softness right now. It brings the structural permission to stop carrying what was never yours to carry indefinitely. The reckoning that this aspect creates is not just for him, it is also for you. It is the honest accounting of what you have given, what you have spent, what you have sustained, and whether the distribution of that expenditure has been true. The answer, in most cases, is that you have given more than the situation has returned. Not more than it deserves, eventually. More than it has returned so far. And Saturn, sextile Pluto, is putting weight behind the question, when does your own becoming, your own nourishment, your own rest start receiving the same quality of care that you have been giving to this connection? That question is not a betrayal. That question is the journey asking you to do what it has always been asking you to do, which is to become as real, as full, as genuinely inhabitable as the love you have been offering. You are tired, that is true. You have been carrying something immense, largely alone, for longer than most people in your life know. And the sky this week, the amplification of Jupiter in Cancer and the structural honesty of Saturn, sextile Pluto, and the building tide toward the full moon, is not asking you to carry it more efficiently. It is asking you to finally, fully acknowledge how heavy it has actually been. And in that acknowledgement, without rushing past it into resolution or reframe or the next stage of the journey, in just staying there for a moment with the full, honest weight of what this has cost, something shifts. Not because you fixed anything, but because the body, when it is finally met with honesty, when the accounting is finally acknowledged rather than managed, begins to do something it could not do while you were performing okay. It begins to rest. Not all the way, not permanently, not in a way that erases the weight, but in a way that feels different from the sleep that has not been fixing the tired. A deeper rest, a resting of the vigilance, a letting of the weight be exactly as large as it is, without holding it at arm's length anymore, without the adaptive distance, without the translation into something more manageable for outside consumption. Just you and the full weight of what this has been, and the permission, finally, to not be fine about it. That is not the end of something. That is the beginning of actual repair. The body that has been keeping the accounting is also the body that knows how to heal when the accounting is finally witnessed. You have been witnessed here. You are seen. The tiredness you never say out loud is real. The cost you have been absorbing is real. The love underneath all of it is real. And you are still here. After all of it, you are still here. Not despite the exhaustion, through it. With it. As someone who chose to keep showing up for something real even when the terms of that showing up have been unreasonable for too long. That is not nothing. That is the most important thing. Leave a like and hit subscribe so you stay connected to what is coming next. Drop "I am still here" in the comments. Tell me how long you have been carrying this. Tell me where you are. I read every single one. And if you are ready to understand your specific journey at the deepest level, your birth chart, your soul contract, your divine timing, the link for your twin flame union personal reading is in the description. Your path deserves specific eyes on it. I will see you in the next one.